Good morning, folks. It is that time again for another episode of One Door at a Time. This is episode 5, and today I am joined by Everett Thomas. One Door at a Time is a podcast where we talk about people's history in the home service business, and we'll give some sales tips along the way and hopefully encourage you, if you're in the business, to continue to do so. And if you're not, maybe you'll consider joining a company and doing so, in particular, our company, Security National Life. So, with that, Everett, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the meeting.
Well, you're a little bit different than the previous guests that I've had on because I know that you've actually done something similar to this at least once that I heard about on a different podcast where basically the agents were final expense agents and they were going, "What in the world are you
Yeah,
doing?"
right.
Yeah. So, what was the name of that podcast again?
The insurance panel.
Okay, the insurance panel. So, shout
Yeah.
out to the insurance panel. If you are listening to podcast, I'm sure they're on the various platforms. And if you are listening to us on YouTube, we are also on Spotify or vice versa. And if you don't mind, by at least by the end of this episode, be sure to smash the like button or applicable sign of appreciation and give us a follow for this and other episodes that will appear in the future. So, Everett, why don't you get us started by talking about yourself and how you ended up getting into the home service business?
Well, I had a brief run at the insurance business back in the mid '80s, actually early '80s, because a friend of mine recruited me to do voluntary life insurance where it was payroll deducted. He was working with a broker, and I got assigned to the state employees union. So I was out visiting with state employees and trying to enroll them in life insurance, and I actually did pretty well doing that. But the broker uh, decided to not have his own enrolling agents anymore, and he hired an enrollment company. So that lasted 6 months, and in the meantime, I had gotten an offer from the Yellow Pages, so I went to work for the Yellow Pages for a while.
Well, hey, so let's
Yeah,
pause. Let me
yeah,
pause right there for a second,
yeah,
because
hmm
depending on the age of our listener here,
yeah.
they might not even know what the yellow pages are.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, yeah. Yellow Pages was kind of like when you want to Google a plumber. Well, we didn't have Google. We had a big giant book and I was in Phoenix at the time, and it was a giant book. So 2 volumes, probably like they had maybe in Atlanta or someplace like that. But
Mhm.
I did that. Did pretty well with that too. But we, for family reasons, wanted to move to Virginia, and when we moved to Virginia, because the Bell system, it was a phone company job basically. The Bell system had broken up right then, and so you couldn't leave one phone company and get a job at a different phone
Mhm.
company kind of thing, or even a Yellow Pages publisher. So and I had enjoyed the insurance business, so I started looking for an insurance job, and I went to work for one of the big mutuals for a little bit, but I was new to town, and they kind of counted on you being able to network through your friends and family and things like that. And, didn't do too well with that, but a friend of mine said, "You know what? This debit company over here has an opening," and and he said, "I used to do that," and he was a pastor. He says, "I used to do that, and Everett, you ought to go and interview for that. I think that would suit you." And of course, I'd been in sales for a while at that point, uh, but I went and did a ride along with a staff manager, and all that day, I could never spot him making a sale, but we came back with a handful of applications, and I and my wife asked me at the end of the day, "Well, how'd it go?" I said, "It was the darndest thing I ever saw." I said, "I think I'm going to try that." So so I got into it, and that that company, I was promoted after about a year and a half to sales manager position, and because I had done really well in my first year, I doubled the size of my debit, and won the trip and all that. And so they made me a sales manager, and I did that for a couple of years. I went through a discouraging phase as a sales manager because they figured out that I was really good at spotting agents stealing money,
Mm.
and so they kept sending me out with other managers, agents, to see if I could tell if they were in the book or not, and I'd come back, yeah, he's in the book. So, uh, uh, and for those that don't know what that means they're stealing customers' money, they're misappropriating funds, and something I just despise, because these are people that the people we deal with are not wealthy people.
Right.
They're and you know you're taking that what seems like a small amount of money to you, which tends to balloon after a while. Most agents are stealing it. They think they're going to put it back next week when they get paid again, but it tends to balloon. But that little $100 that you took from Miss Mabel, I mean, that's her groceries for the month. You know, for you, you were a little short in your checking account. You needed to pad it, or whatever was it, whatever the reason was. Anyway, make a long story short, I got really discouraged by that, by how many agents I was catching in that time. Now there's systems in place today where agents don't get away with that, but at the time, pretty much a manager had to spot it, through an audit or whatever. But so went back to voluntary benefits for a while, but I still the debit had gotten in my blood, the home service had gotten in my blood, and even when I was doing voluntary service, I was building an independent home service agency over here on the side, and uh, and then eventually went back to work for one of the big companies. But I have been, since I started with home service in particular, uh, I have not really ever gotten away from it, even when I tried. So several years ago, I said, I make more money on my home service stuff than I do doing anything else. All the other things I did, the final expense I was writing, the ordinary policies I was, uh, you know, writing upper middle class people, even, more sophisticated policies and everything. But I just enjoyed the relational nature of home service more than anything else I did, and it paid good. So I decided to focus on it a few years ago, and really haven't looked back. I can still do some of those other things because I'm independent, but
Sure.
but home service is like that's my sweet spot.
Yeah, and a couple of things on what you were saying a while ago about Miss Jones's premium, and of course their economic standing, and
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether somebody's rich or poor, nobody should steal from them. But you know,
Right.
you, you know the in the home service business in particular, those customers place an awful lot of trust in
They
people.
do. They
And,
do.
and especially in this day that we live in, where everybody's trying
Mm-hmm.
to rook everybody, I think about that at times when I knock on a door, and I don't know these people from Adam, and
Right.
they're like, "Yeah, come on in," and I'm thinking these people are
Mm-hmm.
giving me this money, and
Yeah.
and these days I've been doing it long enough that in the small towns that I work in, most of the
Mm-hmm.
time we know somebody who knows somebody. So it's not like I'm a
Right.
complete stranger, but
Yeah.
still, they don't have any kind of relationship with me to personally trust me like that. And to violate that trust is definitely something that I'm not fond of either.
Right.
Um, as an aside, it's funny that like it's easy to spot somebody that's was especially back in the day where there was a lot
Hmm.
more of us out there. Easy to spot somebody that was playing with the money. Um, but it's amazing how the sales manager of the staff that that agent was on was totally oblivious to it. I don't know if
Right.
you ran it into that.
Well, I'll say this. Very recently, I was one of my clients asked me to come and look at her cousin's insurance with one of the big captive
Hmm.
home service companies, and there is every indication that he's being taken advantage of. Okay, uh, I think the man's uh, stealing his money. I think he lapsed one of his policies and he's still collecting on it. I can't prove any of this, not yet, uh, but I'm not going to replace him until it's proven. You know,
Hmm.
I don't like to replace other agents' business. If it's solid business, I'm going to leave it alone. You know, I'm not. I don't know. A lot of the final expense guys build their businesses on replacing business, and I just don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me. You know, we're supposed to be helping people, and we're going to start them over and start their. Sorry, I'm rabbit trailing, but we're going to start their contestable period over, and we're going to start their. Uh, I mean, come on, you know. They got a solid whole life policy that they've had for a number of years. Leave that thing alone, man.
Well,
I don't, you know.
not to bash on the final expense guys because we
Yeah,
appreciate your likes and listens to this podcast as well as anything.
yeah. I'm not
But
bashing them, but
but you know it
I
is
don't get the
reality. I
mindset.
mean,
Yeah,
you know, because most of them are chasing that first year premium. Most of them are chasing that first year premium commission, and then after that, they're done. You know, what's the average
yeah,
life expectancy of a final expense agent? And there was a company that was big on selling term as opposed to whole life insurance, and um, you know, all the time, you know, they would say buy term, invest the difference. Well, that works if it works, but how many times did the customer come off bank draft? How many times did it not work out and then the customer ends up losing their insurance? They put them on bank draft and they forget about
yeah,
them. So the
yep,
service aspect isn't there. And really, to be
right. Hmm.
honest, how, you know, just like, you know, I can sell final expense insurance, but, you know, the fact is that a lot of our customers like that one-on-one interaction. And to be frank, that's what gives us the upper hand. So why I've always
Hmm.
wondered about other companies that have gotten out of this business. Why are companies so quick to try to get rid of the one thing that gives you the upper hand and the advantage?
Right.
Because the agent is what gives these companies the upper hand. So, like in the home service business, I would rather be the big fish in the
Hmm.
small pond.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to mess with me. I get the take of whatever I want versus
Right.
being in the small fish in the big pond where I'm competing with the big guys over a dollar difference in premium.
Right. Right.
Uh, you know, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Except that, like you and I both know, that a lot of times people that have made those decisions have never done what they were asking everybody else to do. So of course they would think that it didn't make any sense to do it the way we do.
Right. Right. Well, it's uh, I'll say this about that. I just in case somebody thought I was complaining about final expense agents replacing me. I don't. I never get replaced. Rarely.
Hmm.
Rarely. When I do get replaced, it's on my bank drafted final expense policies. It's not in my home service.
Right.
I've had a couple of cases where somebody tried to replace me, um, but guess what? My clients know me. Yeah, I love them, and they know that. And if I have to, I'll bring it up to them. I said, "Do you think that guy's going to love you the way I love you?"
Right.
You know. So uh,
Well, and yeah, and you know, I had a customer who lived way at the end of the route. And years ago, I took a staff, and so I needed to kind of cut the route down, and I felt like she wasn't gonna buy no more insurance anyway, right?
right.
Like I had a crystal ball to know that, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
So I put her on bank draft, and so like a year or so, probably no, let's see, from '04 to '07, so 3 years. So 3 years later, I said, took a new agent out there, and I said, "Hey Johnny, let's go out here to Pam's house and let's see about writing her some insurance." Well, Pam had gotten married, and she said, "Hey Jason, we kind of had gotten caught up on everything, and she said, I got this insurance policy. Come to find out, it was like an accidental death policy. And I said, why would you even buy that? Why
Right.
wouldn't you just call me and ask me about it? And she said, well, Jason, if I was waiting on you to come by to sell my insurance, I wouldn't have had any coverage at all. And I mean,
Yeah.
that was like a stab in the
Ooh.
heart, you
Yeah.
know? And of course, I ended up writing her coverage. And when I went independent, she chose to have her all her coverage with me, and I paid a claim out when her dad died. But you
Hmm.
know, the point that I got then was, regardless of whether somebody's on bank draft or collect, because I don't collect every single piece of business that I have these days. I'm sure you're much the same way. I'll a lot of them I'll stop by and let them know I stopped by. If I called them at the wrong time, they can either
Right.
mail it in, they'll call the payment in, any number of
Right.
things. I don't have
Right.
to necessarily come back next week like we used to.
Right.
So there are ways that we've come up with the times, but I don't want to forfeit the one thing that sets me apart from everybody else that's putting ads on TV and everything.
Well, that's right. And I've been thinking about that lately, honestly, because you know, when COVID came in, uh, I wasn't particularly afraid of COVID myself, but my clients really were. And just out of respect for them, I gave people the option if they had a debit card, we could take it over the phone.
Yeah,
Okay, I if we're gonna do this not in person, at least I want to personally. I still want the phone call so I can talk to them, you
sure.
know. But but I was talking with somebody recently, also in the home service business, and he was saying, we that whole situation really changed our business, and not for the not for the better, uh, because we're not in the house. You know, we don't meet the friend that's sitting there or the cousin that's sitting there. We don't, you know what I mean? Uh, we're not getting as much opportunity. We're not knocking on the house next door because we're not there. You know, so it loses a lot of opportunity for us by doing too much of that over the phone. Now, frankly, my debit has gotten so huge that I couldn't possibly collect it all in person. It just
Mhm.
wouldn't be physically possible to do it. But I don't want to get away from it. I can see, obviously, the way I was trained. If somebody wanted to go on bank draft or just mail it in, we try to talk them out of it because we wanted to see them there. You
Well, I mean, again,
know,
that's their sales. So at the time of this recording, over the past 3 weeks, I've written 15 or 16 applications.
okay,
Okay.
hmm
I didn't do it knocking doors.
right,
I've just been doing this long enough. Well, one of the six apps called me, and I've known their family for 20 plus years,
yeah,
and it was a non-starter. Hey, I'm going to get insurance. I'm getting it with you.
right,
And the rest of them were just existing customers that I was just adding additional insurance on. And so why would I give that up? You
right,
talked about
right,
the COVID deal. There's a competitor that you know of that when COVID hit, we at Security National took much the same road that you mentioned, which was, hey, be wise about it. If you're
hmm
fearful of, you got health problems,
right,
mask, distance yourself, figure out ways around it. But we
hmm
don't want to get away from what works. But this other company took the right opposite approach. They basically told people pins down, stay at home, call everybody over the phone, get them all on bank draft. And
right,
I knew behind the scenes that really they were just itching to get everybody on bank draft anyway and get out of this business. But so now they are having well, I'm not going to say the exact name of their program because then that'll tell who it is. But uh,
I think I
they
know who you're talking about.
they have a program where they're trying to re-engage everybody in the field because they've gone 3 years now of hiring new
Hmm.
agents and even new
Right,
sales managers that have never done what you and I have done.
right,
And they're like, and behind the scenes they're like, hey, we're having a problem engaging these people because they
right,
don't
right.
want to go out there.
Yeah. If
And
it's
so
if it's
you did it to
if it's the
yourself.
oh yeah, yeah, they did. And if it's the company I'm thinking about, the new incoming president a couple of years ago went on a ride along with a friend of mine onto his debit,
Mhm.
and he wanted to know why he asked why in the world do you do this? Because his particular company represented not really big premiums as a rule. He says, "Why in the world would you do this for such a small amount of money?" And my friend says, "Listen, I don't just have I don't just have this person in your insurance. I've got I've got I've got her mother, I've got her brother, I've got the neighbor, I've got the cousin, I've got." He says you're thinking I'm collecting a $20 premium, but I'm really collecting it's about $200-300 a month if I count all the family members.
Sure.
So and he said and I got that because I started with that little bit of premium.
Hmm. It's
So
just to get in the door, much like we've used
uh,
fire insurance in the past to get in that
uh-huh,
door. That
right,
one little premium, I'm not going to stop at that one little premium. There's going to
right,
be needs arise. There was a customer I'm thinking about now that was with my former company, and I didn't go in and replace all her business because I couldn't. It would not have benefited her, right?
right,
Obviously, it would
right,
have
mm-hmm,
benefited me, but I mean, it wouldn't have benefited her.
right,
So I said, here's what we need to do. If there's anybody you need insurance on, you let me write it. And that's what I've done. And she pays me $55 a month.
mm-hmm,
Uh, that's not counting the referrals I've gotten from her. I'm just talking about it from her. And I've written those policies since, and the other companies hasn't written any.
yeah, yeah,
And so, it's going back to, the final expense model again, not picking, just telling, the final expense agents out there that there is a better pasture, at least in my humble opinion.
right,
And that is that, they pay for these leads, and leads generally are worth about as much as what you put into them, right? Because
right, mm-hmm,
they might have been sold 4 different times before they got to you, or
right,
any
mm-hmm,
number of things. Whereas think about if you got a lead and you got paid to run the lead
right,
and liable to have gotten paid if you make an additional sale. So every time I make a collection, I don't look at it as making a collection as a dreary thing.
right,
I look at it as this is a lead I'm running because this customer, I'm going to treat them right, and they're going to tell
mm-hmm,
me their friends to go sell. They're going to need new insurance. They're going to tell me who to go talk to. And so that's a lead. And so
right,
on
right,
top of it, I get paid to run it. So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's amazing, and the truth is, if you stay at it long enough, and as long as I have, uh, you know, I had some stuff happen in my personal life recently because my mom died. She was in another state. I had to go over there and settle affairs, and frankly, I wasn't producing anything for that month. Uh, guess what? My income didn't suffer because of that.
right.
Uh, it didn't suffer. So I was gone, and I've had a couple of family deaths where I was out of town handling things, and pl- plus I had a little health issue at one point. You know what? You build up a home service agency. You get enough. I've got more than just. I'm not just paying the bills these days. I've got money put back. It's it's a it's like it's like that snowball at the top of the hill as it rolls
Hmm.
downhill. It keeps picking up more and more and more. Like Dave Ramsey talks about the debt snowball. I'm talking about an income snowball.
Sure.
When I started as an independent, uh, I was a I'd had a bad situation at a company where pretty much I think I may have had a lawsuit against them if I'd wanted it because of the way things were done that ended up stealing commissions from me. Uh, and you know, somebody might be thinking, "Oh, you just thought that was happening." Oh, listen, the regional vice president that was involved in that, uh, because of the way he had done me, he had done other agents the same way, and he was actually terminated not long after I had quit the company. But when I quit the company and basically told them I'm going to be your competitor, uh, I was broke. I was dead broke, and I didn't have money for anything. I didn't have money to buy leads. So I went back to my old ways and started building it the way I knew. Now I did get a hold of a telemarketing computer, and I did sell a lot through those leads, but they were made illegal after a couple of years. You couldn't use those robocall machines. So what was I going to do? I still wasn't making enough money. So, uh, well, knocking doors still works. So I did it, and continue to build that agency and continue to build it to the point where now I don't suffer for income. I don't ever need a lead, and like you, I don't hardly knock on doors. It's uh, matter of fact, the only time I really knock on a door is because maybe I've got a little extra time. I might as well do something productive.
Sure. Sure.
But I don't need it because
Well,
I mean, 90% of my sales come from my book these days.
right.
I don't, my existing clientele and referrals and stuff like that. So,
Well, and talking about you mentioned the dialer, which you and I have talked off air about that before, but
right.
it's an interesting point that I wanted to bring up, and that is whether it's the home service business or any business, we have to learn to pivot in life, right?
Yep.
Because if we put all our eggs in that one basket and that one
Yeah.
basket falls apart,
Yeah.
because look, I've worked for a company before. I didn't think I was ever going to leave the company, but the company left
Right.
me when they sold out.
Yeah.
And
Right. Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, it happens. And so you have to learn to say, hey, I, I've got to do something a little bit different. And in the home service
Yep.
business, we don't collect weekly premiums anymore. So
Right. No.
there are things we've changed and have come up with the times. And but the basics crux of the relationship that is built with our customer base is the big thing that sets us apart from the rest of the guys that are out there
Mm-hmm.
and gals that are out there. And that's something that I don't want to lose. And we don't sell microwave success. I've heard interviewers talk about the millions of dollars that they made selling Universal Life and all these other products, for everybody. And that's great, but what'd you make the next year on the same stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
And versus if you build an agency, a block of business, a debit, whatever you want to call it, if you
Right.
build a block of business in the home service business,
Right.
uh, to Everett's point, I mean, how will your income be in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely lucrative over a longer period of time. And one thing that I failed to do at the start of this, which I tried to do in the previous episodes, Everett, is to give some kind of little sales tidbit. And I think uh, while we've been talking, there's been plenty of sales tidbits for people to pick out, but plenty of nuggets there. But what if you had to give one tip to whether it's the rookie or the experienced agent out there? What would that be?
Well, I when I was a young agent, I still had a young family at home, and one of the things that I did, I believe in goal setting. I believe that a lot of people poo-poo the idea of having a premium goal,
Hmm.
but I maybe it was the way I was trained because we used to do daily board call.
Right.
I still actually I keep a calendar on the wall where I write my production every day. How many apps and how much premium it was, and I've got records going back since I went back to being independent in 2006. I've got records that show me uh, month by month and year by year what I've done all that time, and it makes a difference having a goal. And the thing I hit on, I'm not sure if somebody gave me this idea or it occurred to me, but I think somebody said, bring your family into your goals. Let them know uh, how you're doing, you
Hmm.
know, and maybe it goes to originally back in the day, the company that I worked for used to send the leaderboard to my wife. It was addressed to her, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, so, uh, so I had a goal where basically if I made the goal high enough that I probably wouldn't hit it every single week so that it would be special if I did.
Sure.
And and when I did, the kids knew that we were getting pizza on Friday night. Now we didn't get pizza every Friday night, but if I made that goal, we got pizza and maybe went and saw a fun movie or something. But it was like they won something because I hit the goal for the week, and that motivated me and that drove me. But so all I would say about that is you might have your own way of doing that, but yeah, bring your family into your world. Don't have a separate world from your family. Get them involved somehow. Get them. I mean, they're your best cheerleaders, right?
Sure.
Your wife and your kids. They're gonna motivate you and drive you, but they won't if you don't involve them, and if you don't stay involved with them too. That's another. I mean, that doesn't sound like a sales point or a sales tip, but what do we do this for? Honestly, if we're family men, we're doing this for our family, right? Uh, at the end of the day, yes, we want to make money and do all that, but at the end of the day, we're doing this for our family. So if you're a family man or a family woman, I would say get your family involved and make sure you stay involved in their life too.
Well, so some great points there. So I'll just tee up off of those two with that. One with the sales goal, I've noticed that when, especially people that come from the captive side of the business, when
Right,
they go independent, they they're just like footloose and fancy free. They're like
yeah,
the horse that got out of the pasture, and they're never going back to that pasture. They're just going to
right,
run around to their heart's content. You can there are certain things that the captive world does good. The board call, most of them aren't done well, but the
right,
point again is, hey, this is a sales goal. I never wanted to be that guy that had the low
right,
week, right?
yeah,
And so
right,
it's psychologically, I'm going to go out there and push. I mean, I remember
right,
going into the district office on a Thursday with knots in my stomach because I hadn't wrote anything yet,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then went out and wrote something that night after I left,
right,
and so
right,
to bring in Friday. But and so we they get away from that. But yeah, you got to put your goals out there because I used to have a white marker board when I went independent. I had a white marker board, and every
mm-hmm.
time I got a new policy, I would update the numbers. And so
Okay,
I started as a captive agent with Security National back then, and so back then our newsletter only it didn't update as quite as fast as what I thought it should. So I would constantly call the home office because I wanted to know where I was on the numbers. Where am I at on the numbers? Where am I at on the numbers?
right,
And
right,
they're like, "Why is this guy even worried about it?" Um,
uh-huh,
until they finally say, "Well, this guy's worried about it enough about it. Let him change everybody else's thoughts too." So, but yeah, and then the second part of what you mentioned was the family part and not having a separate life. I feel like that a lot of times people in whether it's home service business or any business, they feel like, okay, I have a work life and I have and you hear about work life balance. But part of the balance is being good at both. And so you can't balance if you have nothing on one side of the scale and you're all over here.
right,
And you
yeah,
jump over there. The scales are constantly being tipped one way or another.
mm-hmm. Yep.
So instead of having a separate life, work-life balance is having one life and living it everywhere.
Yeah.
And so with on the debit, everybody asks about my wife and kids. They know how many kids I got because
Oh
a
yeah. Oh,
bunch of them.
absolutely.
I
Hmm.
used to send out Christmas cards to all my customers, and they would put the Christmas card on the mantle, uh, and at Christmas time. And so it's just a part of hey, we're all in this together, and I'm going to help you every way you can if you'll help me. So if I run into my customers at Walmart,
Yeah.
hey, how you doing? I'm not trying to dodge them because guess what? I've done
Yeah.
them right and I treat
Yeah.
them right. And I'm the same guy,
Hmm.
I'm not living two different
Absolutely.
lifestyles. So,
Absolutely.
and it makes it easier as an aside to that. It does make your life easier because you're not trying to remember who you are, where you are, right? So
That's right.
you get to messing up if you
That's
do
right.
that. So,
Keep it above board. Yeah.
that's right. Well, and per usual, as we kind of ramble on through these, I am subject to get off course. So let's bring it back to course. Now, I don't think you mentioned earlier about how long you've been in the business, unless you're just not wanting to reveal your age.
uh, I've been this year it'll be 33 years of
33 years.
continuously being in the business. Yeah.
Okay, so 33 years. So that's what you started when you were 14, 13?
Yeah. Yeah. But no, really, I was a little older than a lot of guys when they start in this business. So and I think in some ways that kind of helped me
Yeah.
because I already knew kind of how to work. I'd been in sales for a while and I knew how to work and how to set goals and how to not just back to what I was saying before is board calls were great for keeping you accountable, but the one I really got to be accountable to is me.
Hmm.
You know, so even in the board call days, the truth is you can fudge those board calls. You
Oh
can
yeah.
you know, but at the end of the day, I'm the one. I'm the one that's got to know whether I've actually made that goal because my income depends on it. So keep
Well,
myself from
the
slacking up.
well, the funny thing about that board call and fudging it, it used to
Uh,
make me so mad when I knew somebody lied on the board call just so that they could, be the board call hero.
yeah,
I almost stand up in the middle of the district meeting and say, "You're lying. Oh, I beat you this week." It would just unnerve me until I finally
yeah,
realized, Jason, yeah, you're facing yourself. Don't worry about what these other people are doing because they'll come and go, right?
yeah,
But
right. Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you've seen plenty of those board call heroes. The An agent takes a debit that had been lapsed to
You're
high
right.
heavens and comes
Yeah,
back, next couple of weeks they're there and
yeah,
has hero board calls, and then you don't see nothing from them. You can't find them with an FBI search warrant. So
yeah, yeah.
uh, so I just learned to finally just take it in stride. But initially, it just unnerved me because I'm so competitive. I hate
Right.
being,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I know. I had a I had a guy on my staff one time. When my father passed away, I obviously had to go out of town for that. That was all. He passed away back in 2001, so it's been a while. But I went out of town and I told the staff, listen, if you guys produce such and such a number, then when I get back, we'll all go to lunch. Okay. I mean, just gave them a goal to shoot for and I'll take you all to lunch. And uh, so they came back, I got their numbers and looked like I'm taking them to lunch. Right. But then somebody came to me and said, that agent over there is, he's sandbagging some of that. He's not turning it in. He's not turning it in. He's sandbagging it for next week or whatever. I said, well, so I called him in anyway. I was mad at him and gave him a hard time, but then I thought, you know what? Everybody else did great, and he learned his lesson. So let's go to lunch. So,
Well, and eventually
But
you got the business anyway. If he's sandbagging it, I guess
yeah, yeah,
if he was just making the numbers up, it'd be a different story.
right. That'd be a little different. Yeah, yeah,
And to reference sandbagging for those of you who might not know that term, you've written the business, and there's any number of reason why somebody might just be holding on to it from submitting it. It might be a
right,
contest that's not starting to the next week, or you want to
right.
kind of
Hmm.
double count it essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's any number of reasons why somebody would sandbag, but I just wanted to throw that terminology out there because I know I
Oh
find
yeah, yeah.
myself with the slang and the jargon saying things sometimes, and I
That's
get those
true. Yeah,
nods, and people go, "What in the world are you talking about?"
that's right.
But
That's for sure.
you still, and I don't think you mentioned this in telling your story earlier, but you went from Virginia, you landed up in Texas.
Oh, I did. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Well, that happened just because uh, my wife's family is actually from the little town that we live in right now. But we're going back to the Dust Bowl years. She was not from here, but her brother ended up back here, and her mother was here, and she had appealed. She came out to visit one time. She really liked it. She had appealed to me and to to move, and so basically I just knew I could do the business here as well as I could do it there. And to be honest, once I got working in Dallas,
mhm.
because I was from the we were in the Norfolk area of Virginia, and I loved it. I did love it there. I mean, I loved. I cut my teeth on the country debit that I had, and back in the backwoods and around the swamp and those country folks, and I mean, it was great. But when I got working in the city in Dallas, I was just amazed at just how much opportunity there was. There's just so many people, you know. So, uh, I mean, uh, I mean, it's like going back to Brer Rabbit. Don't throw me in the briar patch. So,
Well, and yeah, so talking about country debit. So generally a country debit is easier to sell on when you find the houses, but the houses are further spread
right,
out.
right,
Customers are typically more willing and receptive just because they don't get no visitors as much as what the inner city or the in-town debits do.
right.
But
Hmm.
to your point, you can see so many more people in a shorter amount of time.
Right. Yeah, there were no. I mean, I think I had one on my debit when I started out. I may have had one apartment complex in that whole debit. And so, yeah, naturally, I love to knock doors in there, but it was also public housing, and the persistency wasn't great. So,
Sure.
but all the rest of it was out like you're describing, where you can't really just walk down the street and knock on doors. You had to actually drive over to the next house. You know? I mean, there were these little neighborhood pockets that how neighborhoods get built up
Sure.
at, uh, particularly out in the area that I worked after emancipation.
Right.
Uh, People would save up money and buy a big plot of land that the white folks didn't really want, and then the whole family would end up building houses around each other. So
Yeah.
we still had some of that going on back then. Uh, yeah, I did have pockets in neighborhoods, and I might have every house in the neighborhood because they were all family. But
Sure.
uh, but but yeah, when I got into Dallas, I'll never knock all these doors. And you
Well,
know what? I never have.
yeah, and
But I'm
because
not.
what as a naive new insurance agent, I thought, I'm sure the same everybody else's thought was, at some point we've already seen everybody, right? At
Uh-huh,
some
uh-huh.
point, everybody's got insurance, and we will run out of
Yeah,
people to sell. And my sales
yeah,
manager said, "No, you'll never do that. You'll never
yeah,
do that." And I never have. Even
yeah,
in the small towns that I service, that none of them are as big as Dallas. I mean, and to give people an idea, there's more people in the Dallas metroplex
yeah.
than what is in the whole state of Mississippi. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that just tells you how many people there are.
yeah. I actually had to learn how to limit myself to a geographic area, and I will say that for those guys working in the city, uh, uh, that was one of the things that dialer did to me that wasn't favorable. Oh yeah, I got lots of leads, but they were scattered all over.
Right.
So my debit today, honest to goodness, it goes miles and miles. When really, when I decided a few years ago to focus on home service, one of the things I really tried to do was to make all of my marketing efforts within a couple of zip codes, but really three zip codes, and leave it at that. Not try to. I mean, it's bad enough when somebody moves from my core debit area into some other spot, that I have to go and deal with that. But you'll do better. You folks that are working in the city, you'll do better concentrating in a particular area. Oh, there's opportunity over there too, but you're going to spread yourself too thin, and that's a little free advice.
Sure, sure. Well, Everett, as we're kind of wrapping things up, I always like to wrap things up with kind of a call out to folks who have never been in the business before. And I know at Security National, we are continuing to recruit those folks. This year is one of our big recruiting drives, is folks have never done this before because
Mm-hmm.
we need fresh blood. And so but if you have been doing this before, maybe you like what you're doing, and all these stories that Everett and I have been telling you, you just resonate with you because you like what you do, but you don't necessarily like the company that you're doing it with anymore. I will say that there are viable alternatives out there for you. That if you are someone that is good with people, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to every week say, "Thank God it's Friday. Oh God, it's Monday."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You don't have to dread that Friday meeting where they beat you down and tell you have to work Saturday and Sunday. I mean, I was in with a previous company, and the district manager's talk was how to make an extra day each week. And so basically, his sales pitch was to work ever how much that math works out, an hour or 2 hours more each uh, day, and you end up making an extra day work.
Right.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, and so when I interviewed for the district with that particular company, I told them that I go Monday really hard, Tuesday almost equally as hard, Wednesday slacks off because Wednesday was always church day back then.
Yeah.
It's Tuesday now for me, but anyhow, it was Wednesday then, and Thursday is cleanup, and Friday's an office day. You go home.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
they said, "Well, you've been talking to this other guy who was kind of old school." I said, "Look, if I suck that bad, you don't need me in this position. If I got to work Saturday and Sunday, you
Uh-huh.
need somebody else." Of course,
Uh-huh.
the other guy told him, that he worked Saturday, Sunday, whenever day that he wanted to make. And later on, ironically enough, I got the chance to thank that regional manager for not hiring me. And so I ended up here. But at that time, I wasn't too happy about not getting the job. But
Oh, right.
but yeah, but I mean, all that to say that you don't have to hate what you do, or the company. If the company that you're working for, and Everett mentioned this earlier, in one of his previous companies, had kind of cheated him out of commissions. You shouldn't feel that way. There are plenty of viable alternatives out there for you, and even in this business, as few of us as there are out here anymore, there's still viable
Right.
alternatives for you to go to work for a company that pays you fair and gives you the opportunity, and then you make the most of that opportunity, whatever way you want to do it. If you want to build a block of business, you want to build a side hustle, whatever you want to do, you can
Yeah.
do that. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to hate the company you work for, because to me, it's always been easier when you can trust the company that you're working for to pay the claims, to do what they need to do
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
they need to
It's
do it.
very
It makes
important.
your job so much easier.
Yeah.
at least my sales job. I've never been one of those salespeople that's been able to kind of look past that and
Yeah,
say, well, hey, yeah, just buy this, and I'll worry if they don't pay for it later, type deal. So.
right, right. Hmm.
So if you are interested in that, of course, I, being the vice president of home service for Security National Life, would tell you to visit www.snlhomeservice.com and click the button there to contact us. You can find me on LinkedIn. Of course, this podcast is going to be broadcast on YouTube as well as Spotify, probably coming soon to an Apple podcast near you. But yeah, that's what I wanted to shout out to those who might be listening out there. And Everett, as we get wrapped up, anything else that you want to share for those people that might be experienced in this business or not?
The guys that are experiencing, you're still with a captive company. Uh, uh, Come on out of there because it's unbelievable how much you'll make as an independent. It's so much different. The experience is so much different. It's so I'm I I working for captives. A lot of times I just felt stressed. You know,
Well, you think about
I don't.
captives, I mean, that's akin to slavery, right? I mean, you feel like you're captive in this
Yeah,
cage, and they hold, whether it's the commission check,
right,
the quote unquote security of having a set salary each week, or
right,
your health insurance over your head. Guess what? All
right.
those things can be gotten elsewhere, right?
Yep,
And
yep,
so, like myself, like Everett, we're not beholden to some company that's out there wanting to cut commissions because some guy in an ivory tower somewhere thought that
right.
that's the best way to save money.
Yeah,
And not trying to figure out, you don't have to have a mathematical degree to understand our contracts.
right. Hmm.
But you can, all you got to do is talk to people, treat them right, and good things happen. And, not to say that starting off, I think I and Everett both alluded to this, but starting off, it wasn't easy. But
Right.
now, years into it, looking back, go, man, if I'd only started this 5 years earlier, where would I be at,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, I mean, I think if I'd been building this from jump, I mean, it
Yeah,
wasn't available. I'm going to say it wasn't available as far as I know. I don't think there
sure.
were independent debit
No,
companies back
because
in those
everything was
days.
captive. Yeah.
Yeah, but I, I mean, I can't even imagine how much money I'd have at this point. Well, for that matter, before I discovered that there were independent debit agents, uh, I made an agreement with the final expense company that would allow me to collect, right?
Uh-huh.
And then they pay pretty decent renewals, but nothing like what I get now. So, um, uh, the reason I did that was just because I kept running into people that didn't have bank accounts. You
Right.
know, so uh, you know, uh, yeah, even if I'd really started in independent home service, and if I had really focused on that
Hmm.
from the time I left that captive company, oh, I'd be making triple the money I'm making now, and I'm doing okay. So,
Yeah, that same here because I got my PNC license and thought that's what I wanted to do. Um,
mm-hmm,
and then finally said, "Hey, look, I need to focus on one thing, and I like
mm-hmm,
the home service aspect of it, so that's what I focused on, and
right,
it worked out. But so Everett, I really appreciate you agreeing to do this
sure,
and coming on
my
with us
pleasure.
as there. And then hopefully for those of you who are listening out there that you have hit the like button, applicable sign of appreciation on the various platforms that we're on, and we'll reach out to us at www.snlhomeservice.com. And if you're interested in learning about being licensed or being appointed with Security National Life. And so till next time, happy selling.